Hi there, this is Carl Irwin with another Blender tutorial. I'm going to be working on a series hopefully here that'll be beginning today where we're going to deal with the new features that can be found in Blender 2.78 concerning the application of environment mapping to the viewport. Up until now, environment mapped textures have not been available to us within the viewport without applying those textures to some sort of geometry. We've been unable to see them using the world textures and materials, and we've been unable also to apply environment mapped textures to materials for objects within a scene, such that we can apply true reflection of a 360-degree environment or any other kind of artificial light influence, sort of a PBR lighting influence. Now, I just want to mention that what we're going to be doing is not true PBR in the sense that this is not going to be a physically based kind of presentation of an environment texture, but rather it's going to just emulate or rather fake the possibility of it. So this is going to require a little bit of artistic license and some artistic choices and able to make it work. And the point of doing this is, again, as my channel indicates, the point of this is to be able to create production-ready assets and renders from the viewport without having to render using a ray-traced render engine. Okay, so I'm going to show you some ways through the progress of the series to do these things. Now, let's open up Blender very quickly here. The version that we're running again is 2.78. You must use this version. You cannot use any previous versions to accomplish these things. You have to use this current one because the environment mapping is not available to you until this particular release, the most recent one, as of the time of this recording. I want to show you quickly what we're talking about here when we're talking about these environment map textures. I have an example here. So this is what's called an equirectangular environment map. This was actually created by this person. Let me see if I can find it here. This person here on Wikimedia Commons, you have to attribute this. It was generated by this person, Artem Svetlov, and it is available for download, redistribution, alteration, and use with attribution here, as long as you indicate the person that it's coming from. So you can download this and a lot of other things from the Wikimedia Commons that are equirectangular environment maps. So this is a 360 photograph. It was either taken with a camera capable of taking such a photograph, or it was generated, most likely in this case, as I can see from the shadow, was generated from multiple still images that were stitched together. And the idea here is this is kind of like unfolding a map of the world into a rectangular kind of map where you are distorting and stretching portions of it to lay it out flat. So everything here on the bottom edge is around the very center southern pole of the image of the sphere, and then the entire top edge is the very center point of the northern sphere point of the sphere, and then these edges, the left and the right, would match up together to make kind of a seamless image, a panorama that would go around. So this is kind of the more typical application of an environment map, especially when you're using Cycle's render engine. You can apply these and you can use these images to actually light the scene. The image itself will generate your lighting. It will transfer the lighting to the objects within the scene and cast shadows as if those objects were within the scene in reality. This is very useful in cycles because you can set up a lighting scene very quickly just by adding an image, and you get pretty close to the approximation of that location. We're going to try to emulate some of that. The one problem that we're going to run into is that we'll have to find a way to generate shadows, because the way we're going to do this is kind of artificial. It's not, we're going to wrap our image around each individual object within the scene and use it to generate reflections, and we're even going to find a way to generate kind of a diffuse texture. Now we have a problem in that in the viewport on the Blender internal side of Blender, it does not use equirectangular maps on objects. You can use equirectangular environment maps within the scene, within the world texture, but you have to use a different kind of map. You have to use a map that looks like this. This is what's called a box map or a Blender environment map. And what it has is it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares. Each square is representing a different perspective from center. So we have the downward looking perspective, which is the bottom portion of the box. We have the upward perspective, which is the very top of the box from the inside looking out. Then you have a left, right, and then a forward and backward perspective here. So there is a way to create these so that you can use them within the viewport. We're going to look at a way to do that. Now this website here, this wikibook, is about building a skybox, this environment map, but it is centered around Blender 2.4. So it's a very, very old tutorial. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through these steps as it applies to the current version of Blender. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn this image into this image, which is the same image. It's just that we're applying it to a box map. We're going to not only generate this image, but we're also going to generate a diffuse version of this, which would look like that. Now you can notice that these have the same kinds of color qualities, except that this is a very blurred out, diffused kind of texture. And the idea here is that we could map this texture to objects and generate a falsification of lighting that would reflect or sort of emulate the lighting that would come from this kind of an environment, or rather this kind of environment. So if you see what's going on here. Now I get this idea from an old tutorial I saw a long time ago on Andrew Kramer's Videocopilot website when he was first developing Element 3D, which is an OpenGL instance of model rendering inside of After Effects. And he was examining the possibilities of creating environment lighting by wrapping an equirectangular image around the object and generating a diffuse kind of texture that looks like this in order to suggest that kind of lighting. So I'm borrowing that idea and trying to import it now into Blender now that we have the capability to do the very same thing. So let's jump into this. We'll close out these windows here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on GLSL shading. Now you don't need it for this first part, but it will help us see a little bit easier directly from the viewport without having to go into the rendered side of the Blender internal engine. Follow very closely. You'll probably need to stop and pause and go back and check this video over and over again as we go through these steps. The first thing you want to do is download an equirectangular map. Okay, so I downloaded that map, and what I did is I actually changed my map to a 1080p instance of it, because the original map is very, very big. It was 9,728 by 4864. So I just shrunk it down a little bit. It doesn't really matter that the aspect ratio changed a little bit. Blender will automatically map any kind of image into the equirectangular mapping. It doesn't matter what aspect ratio it is. It will just automatically make it work. So I had to generate this image just to make a smaller file size to work with. I could have used the bigger one, but it'll render a little bit quickly doing this. You need to download that. And what we're going to do, actually, before we even get into this, I want to generate another image. So I need to open up an image editor. You can use any image editor. I use GIMP because I use open source software. And I want to open up my resized equirectangular image. And let me change the view here. Go down to 50% so we can see a little bit better. What I want to do is I want to make a diffused instance of this. So this is where I get into the Andrew Kramer tutorial. What he does is he creates a composition in After Effects in the compositor that takes the image, the environment map, and shrinks it down converts it to a very, very tiny size. So it generates kind of a diffused look. So what he's doing is essentially this. We're going to take the image and we're going to scale it to a width of, we'll say 5 pixels in width. And we'll scale that down. You see that it disappears. I don't even see it anymore. Then I'm going to take that same image and I'm going to bring it back. Again, it's 1920. We'll change this to by 1080. And when I scale this back up, you'll see what it does. You see how it's automatically added this very intense but even blur effect to it. It's a little bit different than applying a Gaussian blur, because if I just apply a Gaussian blur, it will fill in neutral tones around the edges, and I don't want that. I want to keep all of the color, the authentic true color that's in there. Now I do want to fix a couple of little artifacts that I'm going to have to contend with. So you'll notice that the gradient going from the left side around, wrapping around to the right, is not exactly perfect. You'll see a fine line here and also around here in the edges when we map this later on, because we changed it so drastically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the layer, and on the top layer I'm going to add an alpha channel so I can erase portions of it. And then on that layer, I'm going to flip it horizontally. Okay, so I flipped it. So now I've put the left side all the way over on the right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my eraser tool. I'm going to make my brush nice and big here. And then I'm going to pick a very steep gradient brush, this circle over here. And I'm going to come over to the edge and not past it, but right up to it. I'm going to erase my top layer except for that very far edge right there. And if I turn off the bottom layer, I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to erase the rest of this image all the way over to the left side edge. So I'm left with just this right side edge here mask that's going to make the wraparound perfect. It'll get rid of any of those little problems and artifacts that I would find on that very edge. It'll remove then the potential for any kind of line over there. So if I turn on the bottom, now I have a perfect wraparound. So that's one fix that we're going to do to the image. I'm going to take this image and I'm going to export it. Export as, we're going to call this I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to add a gradient. One problem with creating the diffuse texture is that you'll notice the ground colors can be presented much lighter than they really would be in real life. This would not be a surface that should be projecting more light than the sky, even though it seems to be a lighter color. So I like to add kind of a ground color, a darker color on the bottom here. So I'm going to use my gradient tool, set it to color to alpha, and we'll move down a little bit. I'm going to start my gradient way down here, and then I'm going to bring it up to about halfway, about to the horizon line. And I want this to be perfectly straight. So right about there. And we'll draw in this gradient. So this will help out considerably with making the lower tones a little bit darker, so they're not projecting light unnecessarily. So now we'll take our image and we will export it, and we'll call this diffused. Okay, so now I have my two images. I have my original equirectangular map, and then I have a diffuse texture. Now what I need to do is I need to convert these into a box map so that I can use it within the viewport. Now the way that we do this is we're going to, let's get rid of the light in here so we don't confuse anything. We need to first map the equirectangular image to the scene. So what we'll do is we'll go to the World tab over here, and then we'll select on the texture slot. We're going to add a new texture, and we're going to leave this on image or movie, and we'll open up our images. So we'll start with our resized equirectangular image, and we want to come down here to the mapping setting and set it from view, the coordinates from view, to equirectangular. And then down here we're going to turn on horizon, and we're going to turn off blend. And then over on the world tab we're going to click on real sky, just like that. Okay. Now if we want to see it from the viewport, if we have GLSL turned on, all we have to do is go to the display and turn on world background, and now we can see our equirectangular projection. You can see this feature is really, really good. You can even render this in OpenGL. If I hit the OpenGL render button, I have my background in there. So this is a new feature. This was not available to us before. Now this is one kind of mapping, the equirectangular one, and this is great, except we can't apply it to the objects themselves. Now I just want to quickly point out a couple of features that Blender now has. You can do environment lighting, if we go to the material tab, by going to the world here and turning on environment lighting, and you can set your horizon and zenith color and ambient color to colors that represent the scene itself. So if I, for example, click on ambient color and click the ink dropper and click on the blue, it will apply a blue ambient color. If I select the horizon color, I can't remember if this represents the ground or not in the blend. I'll select this blue again. Anyway, you can see how we can apply these, colors to it. This is one way to do it. We're not going to use that though. We're going to use a different kind of method here. I'll turn this back to black. We're actually going to map a texture directly to this, so we'll make a little bit more of an authentic representation. What we need to do now is we need to go to the material for the box, the default cube, and we're going to make a shadeless material. And automatically what I do when I'm dealing with shadeless materials and I'm adding textures to them is I like to take the intensity setting here is always default at 0.8. I turn that all the way up to 1, and I like to make this absolute white. I'm not sure that that affects anything, but I just like it to have set all the way to the top, just in case there's any kind of mixing problem with the textures. On the texture slot, we're going to add a new texture. I'll get rid of this one here. And this texture is going to be an environment map. Now what we're going to do is we're not going to add a texture. We're actually going to record a texture. And the way that we do it is we come down here, and under mapping and viewpoint object, we select the cube. Okay. Now if you look over here, there's a drop down under the environment map, and you see it says save environment map, clear environment map, and clear all environment maps, and they're all grayed out. That's because there is no environment map yet. We haven't made it. We haven't created it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my resolution here at 512. It's pretty low res. It's kind of like a game resolution, and I find that that works pretty good when making environment maps for scenes. We already have our equirectangular map to use. It's high definition. If you want to, you can make this higher though. It will cost you in some render time when you're making materials later. But you want to make sure usually that you double this size as you go, so it's kind of exponential. Otherwise, I find that sometimes environment maps won't load properly when you're trying to reload them later on if they don't fit into the scheme. So we'll leave it at 512. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the render settings, because we're going to use the Blender internal. And I like to turn off anything we're not going to need. We're going to need the sky. And for the passes, we'll just turn off all the passes, and it might save us a little bit on the render time, so it's not rendering extra stuff. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the render tab, and we're going to render a single frame. And if we do that, you'll see what happens. It's going to run through first, if you notice that right there, it ran through a bunch of images, these little boxes down here. And what it was doing was rendering each of those 6 boxes that we need for the environment map. And then it gives us one quick final render here, which we don't need. This is a very fast machine. If you're on a slower machine, you can hit escape or stop once it gets through those first environment map textures. You won't need this final render. We go back to the 3D viewport, and now what we want to do is we want to save that rendered texture out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our cube texture. So we're on the cube, and we're back here. Now if I hit this drop down, you'll notice that now these aren't grayed out anymore. It says Save Environment Map or Clear Environment Map. I'm going to click on Save Environment Map. I'm going to go to my folder, and I've already done this, but I'm just going to save over what I have. I'm going to save this one as Box Map Converted. So we'll click on that, hit Save Environment Map. Now I want to do the same process again, except what I need to do is I want to go to my world texture. So this is the world texture, and I'm going to change it from this equirectangular image of the kind of the reflective surfaces here to the diffused one that I made. So I click on that, and now you can see other than the little discrepancy here at the bottom, on the bottom pole and the one on the top, I have a very smooth mapping of my colors from my environment, kind of a diffused instance of that. And we're going to fix these little discrepancies here once we render this out. I'm just going to go through the same process again. I'll select my box. I come back over to my material tab and my texture tab for the box. I want to select the drop down, and I'm going to hit Clear All Environment Maps so we can start over again, and you see that they're all grayed out. And then I'm going to go to my Render tab, and I'm going to hit Render again. And you see it will render out my 6 images plus the final camera view. Now I'll go back to my texture slot, my environment texture for my cube, and I will click on the drop down, and now I'll hit Save Environment Map again. And this time I'm going to save it as diffused. So it will be this one here. I've already saved it once, but I'll save it again. So I'll save that. And then the last thing I need to do is I need to clean up that texture. So I'm going to go back to my image editor. So we'll open up GIMP one more time. And this is something that you will only need to do once for any kind of environment map that you find, an equirectangular map. And the idea here is that you can download or create maps. And by the way, you can use this mapping technique to generate new new box maps by putting images within a scene or objects and then rendering them down to that box. So this doesn't just work as a conversion for equirectangular maps. You can actually use the same process to render a scene of objects and images down to a box map. So that's just some food for thought there. You can kind of generate your own environments from images. What we're going to do is we're going to open up our, let me see if we can find it here, desktop box images. We're going to open up our diffuse texture that we just made. And we're going to fix these 2 little spots here where I see this discrepancy. We want to get rid of that because we don't want those to show up when we're trying to map this as an environment lighting influence. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go to the blur tool, the smudge tool, and I'm going to increase the size a little bit. Not that much, just a little bit. And I'm going to use this fall off over here. It's a little bit more gradual. And I'll click right in the center where that problem's at, and I'm just going to go back and forth a couple of passes, then up and down a couple of passes, and then diagonal and both sides a couple of passes like that, and just kind of brush this out a little bit. Undo that last one there. And you want to be very careful that you don't go over the edges. You don't want to mess up your map and cause artifacts in other places. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the top one. Go up and down, back and forth, corner to corner. Just kind of smooth that out. Okay, so now I've got a very, very smooth map here. All right, and we'll just overwrite that. we're good to go. So we've made 2 images for our library, and I found that you can get away with a whole lot of really clever materials and textures just with these 2 images, and then the various compositing techniques that you can use within Blender itself. So let's take a look at what some of those possibilities are. Let's open up a new file very quickly. And we're going to have a limited scope on this tutorial. We'll get in a lot deeper later on. I would invite you to look back at previous tutorials that I have on viewport material creation. And you can use a lot of those same techniques, many of those same compositing techniques and material creation techniques. However, you can now apply these box maps in any places where you would require reflection. So I have a couple of tutorials on there. Maybe I can link them to those in the description for this one, where I talk about creating kind of artificial environment lighting using shadeless materials. You can apply those same tutorials now using the environment box map that we're using now, and it will generate a stationary 360 lighting map for you. So that'll give you a little bit of a heads up as to the things we're going to look at in future tutorials. What we're going to do is we're going to get rid of, actually I'll hang on to the light for right now, but what I want to do is I'm just going to shut it off so we don't see it. We're going to turn on GLSL shading. We'll get rid of our box, we won't need that. And we'll add a monkey. We'll rotate it on the x-axis, you know the drill for this. Scale it up, and let's add a couple of modifiers here. Subdivision surface, and I'll jump it up to 2, and we'll set this to smooth shading. And there's our monkey. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply some of these textures to our monkey. Let's first apply our world texture. So I'll go to the world tab, and then I'll go to the material tab, and we will apply an image or movie. Actually, what I'm going to do is, instead of image or movie, we're going to apply an environment map. We'll use our box map that we created just to show you how this works. I could use my equirectangular map, but I'm going to use the new image. Down here, I'm going to click on Image File, and I'll click on Open. And we'll go to our new image. That's this one here. We'll open it up. And we're going to set this to Horizon and turn off Blend. And then over here we're going to turn on the world background, and you can see that it's applied already. Our image map, this is our box map, and let's go to our world tab. We'll click on Real Sky. I don't think it really matters in this case. Now you'll notice that the resolution is considerably lower. That's because this is a low resolution render of a box map, but you see the mapping works the same. So if I created a high resolution one, it would look every bit the same as our equirectangular map. It's just that it's a different kind of mapping. It's using a box, top, bottom, left, right, forward, backward, instead of the equirectangular view. Okay, so let's go back to this. We'll use our higher resolution one. So rather than an environment map, we'll change this to image or movie. And we'll click on our original resized version, and we'll set this to equirectangular, and now we have our image here. Okay, so that's the application of the image. Okay, so there's our environment. Again, this was not available to us before. You weren't able to see this in the viewport. Now what we want to do is we want to generate a reflection of that on our monkey. Now the monkey will not take the equirectangular image, but it will take the box map. So let's click on our monkey. We will add a new material. We'll make it shadeless, and I'm going to come over here to the by default we'll jump these up to full value. We'll go to the texture slot, add a new texture, and for this we're going to click on environment map. We're going to open up our image file, and the image file we're going to use is going to be our box map image. Open that up, and we're going to set the coordinates to reflection. And right when we hit that, you can see that it is now applied. As I look around the scene, you're looking at the backside reflection of our image. So you can see here's the sun reflecting there, and out there, there's the sun. So you see how this is applied. So this is a shadeless application. If I turn on only render here, you can see our monkey looks relatively good. The lighting isn't quite perfect, but the reflection is absolutely perfect. It's a perfect rendition of what we see in our scene. So that's the application of the box map. I'm seeing a few discrepancies in here, I think, in the way that this came out. The way the coloring works. So I might want to redo that. You can see how the lighting isn't quite right in there. Let me recycle this. There we go. Something was funny about the way it was mapping there, so I just had to hit the recycle. Now it looks a lot better. You can see the color is right on the money. Okay, so there's the reflection. Now this is this is new. We couldn't do this before. This is a 360 reflection being applied in the viewport, and I can render directly from that. And you see, 1 second I have a perfectly rendered frame. That would be on a very slow system as well. Now the other side of this is to apply kind of our diffuse texture as a means of creating a fake lighting scheme on here. So let's grab that very quickly. We're going to change this to our diffuse texture, and you see it loads immediately there. So what this is showing us is kind of a diffuse representation of the same lighting scheme. So I can see my ground color ambient light matches the ground, my sky ambient light matches the sky, the sunlight is coming from the right portion, and you can see how this works. Now if I add to this other effects like the ambient occlusion effect in there, we'll turn this up to distance of 1, strength to 3, and you can see this really does start to look like this Suzanne is really right inside of the scene there. See how that works. Okay. Now other ways that I can use this, we'll turn off the ambient occlusion. Perhaps I want to have a particular color for this monkey here. I'm going to leave this texture in place, but I'm going to turn it off for a moment. I'm going to come back out here to the material. Let's say we want the material to be a, I don't know, a brown color. So we'll come down here. Actually, let's say like a clay tan kind of color. So we'll go kind of into the oranges and we'll turn this down. So kind of clay model-y looking, up towards the yellow a bit. And if I turn on my ambient occlusion, you can see that. Now the problem is that this does not look like it's in the scene. You see that it looks like it's, it's there, but it doesn't match the lighting of the scene. I'm going to turn down the darken this down a little bit more. What I can do is I can go over here to my texture and I can turn on my texture, but if I change the application to a lower amount for the color, let's say 0.5, and then I turn it to add, so it's adding the color into the color that's underneath. Now it looks like lighting. This starts to appear, turn this back to 2, it starts to look like the sky ambient light is reflecting off of it, and then the ground color is reflecting the color up. This ambient light is now being applied. So you can see how this works. It appears as though this object is within the scene using that diffused texture to kind of cast light ever so subtly onto it. Now this can be used in a manner that's not using shadeless textures. I can use a light in there. The best way to do that is then to apply various nodes in the node editor to accomplish that, and that's a little bit deeper than what we want to spend on this. I just wanted to show you this very simple technique of generating these images, and then from here I'm going to show you how to use these images to composite materials that will cast shadow. And we can even generate on our reflection, we can generate a Fresnel effect. So that the reflections that are facing you, the normals that are facing you, are a little bit duller, more dull than the reflections that are normals facing away, a little bit sharper, which is more realistic. We can even generate a transparent kind of effect. It's not authentic, but there is a way to map using the nodes a transparency so we can generate glass kinds of appearances. Also using a Fresnel effect. So we can do that. We can generate a frosted glass. We can do that so it appears that light is casted through, but it's a frosted texture. We can generate reflective surfaces that are not mirror reflections, but just reflective, like marble or stone that's polished. We can generate car paint kinds of materials. We can generate roughened reflective materials. We can generate all kinds of materials using the nodes just by using these two textures that we have created, these two box map textures. So generating box map textures from equirectangular images, wanted to share that with you. So go start downloading open source and free to use equirectangular images. Generate some of your own, and I'll pick you up in the next tutorial where we'll start to apply these things and generate complex materials that render extremely fast directly from the viewport. So again, this is Carl Irwin, and I wish all of you happy blending.